Hello world, my name is Joanne and this is the Frizzle Factor, a channel slash website that's all about providing conversations and resources for people interested in science and education. And to get this started, I really wanted to be able to get you to get to know me a little bit and to see where I'm coming from and why I think that this is an important arena to be having a conversation in. So to start off, I thought it'd be fun to do a little bit of a series of questions based on interview questions that I have already asked to several scientists who will appear on my podcast, The Frizzle Factor, which is focused mostly on conversations around science and education and science communication. And so let's go ahead and get started with the first section that's really about the introduction. So first, who are you and what do you do in regards to science? So, as stated, my name is Joanne. I am a biology major who recently graduated with her bachelor's and a certified educator. And so I hope to be teaching in a classroom, but long term, I think some of my goals would be more on route of being a naturalist, where I can still participate in education and curriculum development, which I love, and engaging with people, but also perhaps being able to enjoy some of the field work and also holding cool animals and maybe showing and introducing people to animals and having those fun and close encounters. That would be maybe a pipe dream in the future, but at least right now I am actually currently looking for a job. So if you are in my area and you are interested in hiring someone who's really passionate about science education and bringing field practices, especially in ecology, to the classroom, then I'm your gal. So, what's an interest or hobby that you have that's unrelated to science? I have a little bit too much. I'm kind of a jill of all trades. I do a little bit of everything, and that's okay. So some of my other hobbies, I really enjoy writing, and oftentimes my fiction work in children's literature, so middle grade and young adult. I really like to bring in a lot of the ideas that I've gleaned from my work in biology. I really like cool ecological themes and cool creatures and kind of magicalness, and of course the power of friendship. So I really like writing. I also enjoy some games, so I play Fire Emblem, play Pokemon, although I've never caught them all, even though that's what I like to do in real life. But I like to do that, talking with my sister, doing some artsy things. I kind of do whatever takes my fancy at the current moment. And of course, I do actually have a pet tortoise, so I do enjoy actually working with herps, reptiles, and amphibians, and hope that that can be a little bit more of my future going forward. And finally, if your path, or finally for this section I should say, finally, if your path to this point was a checklist or a series of steps, what are the main points that led to here? So I'm going to answer this as I let my interviewees know. It doesn't have to be what you would maybe advise someone else to do, because that's a little complicated, but how did you get here? And so my story is definitely one that I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing, because it's hard to kind of go by the book. My way of coming into science and becoming a scientist and becoming an educator was very topsy-turvy and was not necessarily the most direct or efficient route, but essentially I went through middle and high school. I've always had an interest in a lot of things, but I don't think I was particularly interested in my science classes. I think a lot of people have the experience that maybe their science classes feels more lab-based, so there was a lot of cell and molecular ecology, there was a lot of maybe more lab work, genetics work, chemistry, which isn't bad and that's really exciting. But for me, I often would get kind of bored in those sorts of situations. And I never really thought myself as a science and math person. And I know fully that this is definitely something that was more of a personality trait than necessarily lacking STEM teachers, because I did have math teachers who really did try to encourage me along the way. So I'm definitely thankful for them, and looking back I realized that they were very formative for me. But I just had a love-hate relationship with certain parts of school. I was more of an extracurricular kind of gal. I really liked doing yearbook, really liked doing band, and so going through school, while I wasn't a bad student and some would even consider me a good student, I didn't really like it. And so when I set out to go to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but the subjects that I had kind of been best at were English, and then like things like yearbook and journalism. And so I thought maybe I could go into something communications related, but I also just really liked working with people, and I wanted just that feeling of being able to help people and to kind of be a part of a community. And so I decided to go into social work at the time, which was a really good experience because I had good formative experiences in situations that really were kind of eye-opening and kind of showed me what to expect in some of those situations. But then I was always kind of chasing a new thing. And so after about a semester of chasing social work, I actually transferred to another school and started doing something that was maybe a little bit more broader than that. So I started doing a community development program, which was a little bit of kind of looking at communities, community development, certainly from an economic perspective, but also from the social perspective. So there was a little bit of everything. But again, I struggled. I was not really prepared for college. Like I said, I kind of skated through school being a good student, but I don't think I developed really good study habits. And I had just some home issues that just made going from high school to college difficult. And I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't prepared for it. And so I stopped school, which was actually a good decision. It was scary at the time, but I stopped going to school for the time being. And at the time, I didn't really think that I would return back because I kind of figured, well, unless there's something that's really great that pulls me in, I don't really have the necessity of going back. And I really needed to take time to, not accrue debt and to also just figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I also, at that time, married my husband, and we've been together for 5 years. Yeah. So we've been together for 5 years now, coming on 6 later this summer. And so it's been very exciting. And I loved that. He's been amazing and really supportive for me in my life, especially pursuing the things that I am now. And so for a couple years, I didn't really know what I was doing. I picked up some jobs, and I was just kind of, I guess, in just a state of limbo where I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I was okay to just kind of let it roll. And then we moved to an area where there was a local nature center, and I knew I really wanted to get involved with my community. And so I thought, that's kind of fun. I don't really have any experience with wildlife rehabilitation or handling many wild animals or even animals that are exotic, so things like reptiles. But I started volunteering there. It was only about 15 minutes from where we were staying at that time, and I loved it. I especially fell in love with the herps. So there were some native species there, like the gopher tortoise, that I just fell in love with. And there was also a Russian tortoise that was there that was kind of fostered since not being able to be released. And also their owner had given him up a while ago. And so I just fell in love with these strange, cool tortoises. They were really cool, and there were awesome snakes. There were raptors, so there were owls and hawks and vultures, and they were really cool to interact with. But it was really those herps that really got me, and I got to see a little bit about what people could do to help with wildlife, and I just thought that was really cool. So at that time, I started thinking, well, if I were to go back to school, I want to do this. I want to just play with cool animals all the time. And so what I did I was really have to deconstruct, if I could, what I could. I had to get over some of those like high school hang-ups, high school, middle school, little girl hang-ups of like, not being good at math or it's being too hard or whatever. I really had to reconstruct a growth mindset into myself as an adult. And so I read a book called Letters to a Young Scientist by E.O. Wilson. And I talk about this a lot on my channel and in some of my interviews because it was so formative for me. It's just a short little book that's kind of part memoir, part pick-me-up, that E.O. Wilson, who is a prominent entomologist and educator, talks about his journey coming into science and how he struggled a lot too. I mean, I think he talks about at one point that he didn't take a calculus class until he was like already a professor at an elite institution, just because he had never had to prior to that point. And of course, times change and things like that, but it was just such a good experience to see, like, you can go into anything at any age, and it's not too late. I mean, I know 30 and 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds watching this are thinking like, oh, you youngin', you don't even know, you're so silly for thinking that it's the end of the world for you. But there was a sense in which I thought it was kind of too late to go into some things because it was so difficult. But it wasn't, and it's not. And so I thought hard. But my husband really encouraged me that if it was really what I wanted to do, that he would help me, and we would go through this journey together. And so I did. I went back to school, for a degree in biology. And by that point, I had already accrued most of my core credits, which was good, but I also accrued a lot of credits for humanity majors that were not going to apply. And so I pumped my way in about 2.5 years through a biology degree, going through summers, also just jam-packed in there. And at that university that I was at, so I went to the University of West Georgia, which was a great institution. And one thing that I really like about smaller institutions is that it's easy to plug yourself in and to get involved much easier than you would at a large one. That's not to say that it's not possible at a larger place, but it's kind of glary. Okay. That's not to say that it's not possible at a larger institution to get involved, but it can be a little bit more difficult, especially if you're someone who's maybe not as outgoing. I am probably on the more outgoing side, according to some, but it was still new to me because I didn't have any experience. I had just like touched snakes for the first time in my life just a few months beforehand, and I was going in thinking, yeah, I'll do this. I'll go and become a biology major. So I got connected with a few professors there. I worked with a plant biologist because that was like the first opening that was available, and I figured, well, anything is experience, so I'll try it. And I did some work on moss species with that, so that was kind of fun. And then my real breakthrough was taking a conservation biology class that really opened my eyes to what I could do and where my strengths could be in science. And so the professor, Dr. Andrew Edelman, was my mentor, and he did a class project, and that class project was focused around the camera trap field technique. So camera traps are a common technique used in ecology where people basically just take, like hunting cams, put them on trees in the woods or wherever. I guess if you're in a place that doesn't have trees, you can do it there too, on stakes. But you put these camera traps in the wild and you just see what comes. And this is actually how a lot of research is done with movement of animals, with kind of biodiversity surveys. It's also interesting a way that a lot of nature documentaries get footage of, especially rare animals, is using actual camera trap methods. And so I think that's kind of cool because I didn't really know that, and not a lot of people know that, and I like showing teachers that this is a really easy, accessible thing that your classroom can do and that people can do even as they're young. Camera traps aren't very expensive. I'll go into that maybe in another video about how I think camera traps are really cool, but thing is, I got really excited. I poured my heart into that project. It was so fun being able to kind of go through the process of science for what I felt like was like the first time for me. Like it really just lit me up in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And so I stayed on per his invitation with his ecology lab, working on a survey of mammals in the southeast of Alabama, in the southeast, focused around Alabama. So we worked with several local Alabama institutions and government institutions in order to do a survey of animals across Alabama. And I kind of grandfathered this project, so I kind of came in at the tail end after they had gotten a lot of the data. And I don't know, there's just something about just like going through thousands and thousands of pictures of opossums and deer that just really hooked me. And so that's what I did. I did that for several years, just going through thousands of pictures of these animals and trying to formulate posters and making presentations about them and kind of just talking about that. While there, I also got involved with some other things. I got involved with the herpetology drift fence survey, so learning how to do pitfall traps with drift fences was a really cool technique that I'll also talk about on this channel. And then also I got involved with an ichthyologist who did a lot of local work, working with local schools and doing some education about the local stream. And so I got kind of really into fish. I didn't expect that. Learned how to electroshock and did that a few times at some community events, showing people, mainly children, what there is in their local creek and how to replenish it. At the same time, while I was doing kind of all of this science stuff, I was also getting sucked into the world of education. I think I've always been a little bit of a teacher at heart, but I felt like I hadn't found the content that really grabbed me. I had thought maybe about English, but I'm sorry, English teachers. I am just that kid that just likes creative writing. That's it. That's my favorite part. Although I will say a lot of that did help with my technical writing later, going through some of that in my early college years. But at the same time, I didn't know that there was something out there that I really wanted to teach. And really, it was when I found myself just talking so much about all the things that I was learning in ecology, all the things that I was doing in conservation biology, all the cool stuff I learned about fire ecology, which was really cool and something that captured my imagination. It was really then that I realized, like, oh, the classroom is a place that I can do that and I can talk about these things. And it was just such, I don't know, sometimes I know this isn't for everyone, and not everyone gets this in life, but I felt like I really found a place that I fit and a place that really makes sense for me and my personality. So I got involved through a program called UTeach, which is based out of the University of Austin, Texas, I believe. So University of Texas, Austin, I believe they have the first UTeach program, or is it Dallas? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll correct that in the show notes. Somewhere, University of Texas, they have a program, UTeach, which allows people who are STEM majors to basically minor and then get certified alongside their STEM major in secondary education. And so I thought that was a great route for me to still kind of be focused on the science, but then also get the education and pedagogy on the side. And so I did both of those things in conjunction, did a lot of community service things, did a lot of work locally in stream restoration efforts around the town that my university is based, and I'm still working with many of those people and hoping to continue some of those efforts. And so that's kind of in a nutshell really my story, is that I didn't know that I could do it, realized that I could do it, and then I did it. That sounds too easy. There was a lot of struggle in between, but I think for me, it's all about just exposure. In my future classroom, I want to be able to show a breadth of possibilities for kids, that not everyone who goes into biology is going to be a doctor and a scientist, that there are shades of colors in between for things that you and I can be doing. And so I'm hoping that my story, in at least a little bit, helps maybe some other people to realize that they could pursue something that they didn't think was possible, that they didn't think was a job, that they didn't think could grab their attention, that they didn't think they could do. And that really all it takes is maybe a little bit of growth mindset, so knowing that everyone can improve and change and grow, and then also just being willing to get out there and just try something new. I think that's really cool, really awesome, and I hope to share more on this channel about me and some of my experiences, and having that conversation about all the different possibilities that we could be doing to learn about the world around us. So thank you very much. Please check out my website for resources, and my upcoming podcast episodes will start airing too, where I have conversations with different scientists and science professionals about their own journeys, and I'm very excited. So have a good day.